Hey everyone, and welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. Got an awesome guest on today. He's a television producer, a film producer, and a talent manager. And he was the owner and founder of the Boston Comedy Club in New York City and helped launch the careers of many successful comedians. Please join me in welcoming Barry Katz. Welcome.
All right. Thank you so much. I can't believe I made the cut.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
I am ready for 20 questions. Are you ready for me answering each question, taking about 47 minutes?
Absolutely. Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
What do I do? That's an excellent question. Well, first, before I get into that, I just want to say that I'm grateful that you had me on your show. As I told you before you hit record, I always love seeing the process of other artists and people who are working hard to move the needle. It's a really great thing to see, and I rarely uh, don't get excited by seeing how that works. Secondly, I look forward to something more than anything else in the world. Always. My favorite thing in the world, my number one thing I look forward to in my life is two words, the unknown. And this falls under that category. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited you had me on, Thomas, and thank you. And now I will answer your fateful question. What do I do? Um, One of the things throughout my life that's been very fascinating, but also creates challenges for certain people, is that I never like to do one thing. I never was happy doing one thing. I was always happier doing a lot of things, but that fell under the umbrella of something that I was excited about. In this case, the entertainment business. So I've always loved doing things. So when I started as a stand-up comedian in Boston. That was the first thing I did. Then I started running comedy clubs in Boston, like full-time comedy clubs. And that was the second thing that I did. And then I started an agency to book comedians all over New England and the country. And that was the third thing I did. And then I got tired of Boston mainly because I suffered, well, I shouldn't say I suffered. They suffered a tragedy. My wife passed away when she was 23. And for those of you in the audience, again, fate is a strange thing. So sometimes bad things happen and good things happen fatefully, and they all, as your parents tell you, have a reason for why they do it, and the world has a plan. And so I left Boston and I went to New York, and that was the fourth thing I did. I got uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I got comfortable being uncomfortable. So I just took off, went to New York, got an apartment right away, and I was in New York City. I didn't know what I was going to do, how I was going to do it, but I knew I wanted to be in the entertainment business. And I found a comedy club in Greenwich Village there called the Boston Comedy Club, which, as many people who listen and know about comedy, launched so many people and was a big hangout and for a lot of comedians. Then the fifth thing I did is I started a management company. I wanted to manage some of these young people because I thought they were talented, and I had a little bit of money from the comedy club, so I wasn't worried that they weren't really making any money. And my first client was Louis C.K., and among my first 10 clients were Jay Moore, Dave Chappelle, Tracy Morgan, Wanda Sykes, Dane Cook, um, Daryl Hammond, Jim Brewer, who were on Saturday Night Live as well. Um, and it was just a crazy time. Things really took off for me. And then from there, I started going to Los Angeles, splitting time between going to Saturday Night Live and I started producing television shows. That was the sixth thing I did. So I found that if you represented extraordinary talent and you helped them work together and put the deal together, and you could executive produce shows and make a valuable contribution to the creative process. Sorry. And so that's what I did there. And then the seventh thing I did was I decided to uh, figure out a way if I could merge my company with other great executives who did a whole bunch of different things. So I merged with a company called New Wave Entertainment. And that was the seventh thing I did, where I went into a place that was 50,000 square feet and had editing bays and cameras and 200 employees to do graphics and moving graphics and music and trailers and everything. And that's when I really started getting into doing things that I really hadn't done as much before and I liked, which was producing stand-up comedy specials. And before and after I stopped at New Wave 8 years later, I think I've done over 40 different 1 hour stand-up specials that I've produced. And then what I found was I wanted to go back to do my own thing and be more independent. And I was working with Jay Moore, and he started his podcast. I helped him start his podcast, and he asked me to be his first guest. And miraculously, that first show was the #1 show in podcasting that day. And he asked me to do his third show and his 10th show and his 20th show. And I was just breaking down the business of his career and other people's careers and how I perceived the steps were sort of behind the curtain of the Wizard of Oz and how the business works. Not me being the Wizard of Oz, but the business. And after about 10 of those, he came to me and he said, Barry, I don't know how to tell you this, but you got to do your own podcast. I said, I would love to, but I've never done anything like that before. And he said, you got to do it. I consulted every important person I knew in the business if I should do it. They all told me, don't do it. You know where everything is. You know all the stories. You know all the craziness. But I went with my gut and I wanted to do something that made a difference. And I started it. And my podcast launched in the top 10. And then at many times throughout that period of time when I was really hitting it hard with episodes like with Kevin Hart and Bill Burr, it was like in the top 50, 100 all the time. And I was excited about the response and how it was helping people. So that was like the seventh or eighth thing I did was the podcast industry standard. And then the next thing I started doing was I realized that I loved helping companies and other comedians and other entities succeed with the knowledge I had in my brain. And so I thought to myself, I want to be able to help people and consult with people, but I can't manage everybody. I can't produce every television show. I can't do whatever, but I don't, if I could figure out a way in my spare time to have people Airbnb my brain, I would gladly work as a consultant to help people film their comedy specials, make a television pilot for $6 in a bucket of chicken that looks like, $1 million. And so that's what I've done and I started doing, and I worked for so many different companies. Most recently, I consulted with Cirque du Soleil to help them launch stand-up comedians in their first show in their history of 29 years, a show called Mad Apple at New York, New York, which was incredible. And so that's the next thing I did. And then during the pandemic, I had this studio that I built, and I had nothing to do. No one could come there or whatever. So I created this thing called the Blueprint, or the Blueprint for Success, for artists of all different areas to move their career to the next level. And spent so many a couple of years recording content, over 100 hours of content. And I launched it recently, about a year ago or less than a year ago. And there's over 600 people in the comedy community there who I take meetings every Monday at 5 or after my work. And I talk to people about everything, all the questions they have. I bring on industry people, and that's another thing that I do. And along the way, I've also spent a lot of time working on audio recordings and recording people's albums. I was fortunate enough to have worked with Dane Cook and have 2 albums launch in the top 5 of the Billboard charts for a comedian. I'm not talking about the comedy charts. I'm talking about the Billboard charts, like Lady Gaga and the Stones and Juice World and Drake, and you know, and so that was pretty miraculous to do that and be nominated for a Grammy for Jay Moore's album. And also in live performance, I've been really took that to an exciting place, building things up, and with Dane Cook to the point where we started social media for artists, and where he could press a button and sell out Madison Square Garden twice in one night and Boston Garden twice in one night. So um, I feel like, I've had a chance to be on film sets, television sets everywhere, and the stand-up world, the acting world, everything in between. And that's a summary of what I do.
Perfect. Okay. Let's continue with that. So number 2, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
The key piece of knowledge that makes me different.
Yeah. You kind of answered it already, but maybe you can elaborate.
I think it's a great question, Thomas. There's so many things along the way that you hear when you talk to people. And we all know that everything we hear was probably written on a wall of a cave thousands of years ago. It's just being said in a different way by different people. And the most exciting modern day philosophers of today are comedians who wax poetry and send messages in unique and different ways that are incredible, that give us words of wisdom along the way, or even social media influencers who change the words to different great philosophies to match their own personality and who they are. And I'm not saying they're stealing, they're just, it's just the way it is. I'll give you an example of one piece of knowledge that I loved that somebody told me. I remember when I interviewed Dr. Phil for Industry Standard, I asked him what the greatest piece of advice he had ever gotten in his life, and he said it was from his father. And I said, "What's that?" And keep in mind, it's Dr. Phil, daytime television. This guy is like, you know, G-rated, PG-rated. And he says, "My father told me never miss an important opportunity to shut the fuck up." And again, you could go through 1,000 different phrases and pieces of knowledge that from the old philosophers that talk about how it's better to listen than to talk to, all these things along the way. But just the way he said it was wonderful. And the sad part is, I'm not going to take his advice during our interview.
Great. Okay. Shifting to number 3 then. Why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Another wonderful question. Um, I'm feel humbled that I'm trying to say this in a way that it's not going to come across douchey. Um, is that a word? Anyway, um, when I was a little kid, um, my father passed away when I was 4, and I lived in a town called Longmeadow, Massachusetts, near between the Connecticut line and Springfield, where the Basketball Hall of Fame is in Massachusetts. And didn't really get to go a lot of places. And I remember one time this neighbor said they were taking a drive to Ocean Beach. And Ocean Beach was, I believe, in New London, Connecticut, about a couple hours from me. And believe it or not, I was like 10 and I'd never seen the ocean. The only water I saw was maybe a pool that we used to go to on a busy road called Riverdale Road. Like that's how we didn't have much money. My mother used to take us to the Wagon Wheel Hotel, which was this shitty motel on some road, and we used to swim there. So when I went down to the ocean, I was inspired, because I don't know why, but I saw the ocean and I said to myself, I want to professionally do something that allows me the opportunity to see the ocean. And so that was the first thing that just had a goal for myself. And so as soon as I came out to LA, as soon as I could, I found I was representing Nick Swartzen at the time. And he called me and he told me that a friend of his was moving out of this ramshackle apartment on Venice Beach above the the Fig Tree restaurant, if you know where that is, a great restaurant. And it was $850 a month, and I just got in there and I put all the money down that I could, and so I could get it. And I was on the ocean, and my goal was to see the ocean. And it was a shitty 500 square foot 1 bedroom where the guy on the Venice boardwalk sing Bombaleo 17 times a day. But I was there. And then professionally on the other side, what I've always wanted to do is I've always wanted to be of service. I've always wanted to feel that feeling that you get when you do something that makes a difference to people, when you do something that adds value to somebody's life. And that's the greatest feeling in the world. And for those of you out there, whatever you do, don't ever think that you're just doing it for yourself, because whatever you do professionally, like Thomas is doing this podcast, obviously it's two-sided. One side is he's doing it to um, build his brand, build his resume, build his scope in the world. But also it's 50% of it is to make a difference to people through these interviews. And so I'm humbled that while I'm doing this interview, I'm looking out at Zuma Beach in Malibu, and when I say I'm humbled, I, as you can tell by me stuttering, it's like I don't ever want to take for granted how hard a path it is to get what you want. You know I can choose to live and work anywhere else and probably have lots more financial benefits for whatever, myself, my family, whatever. But I'd rather have a fucking cup in my hand and sitting on the side of the road and know that I can see the ocean than live in a place where I can't. It just inspires me, it calms me. And I've been living, uh, looking at the waves probably for over 25 years now, maybe more. And I don't want to stop. I don't want to have that stop. And so, probably an answer to a further question of yours is I do something that I don't recommend to anybody, but I do it for myself because it pushes me. I get up in the morning and I just think to myself, I'm shit. Nothing's happening. I've got nothing going on. And, essentially, it's over. And that's how I've always woken up. This humbling feeling like, hey, I'm starting from nothing. And it allows me to get up and work really hard and create things. Because what your audience probably knows and should know, um, and if they don't, that's okay, is that what you do today affects what happens to you a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. You never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to be nice to, who you're going to do great work for, that's going to recommend you for something else. I'll give you an example in comedy. It might seem like a weird or a different kind of example, but I represent a comedian named Brad Williams, who, for those of you who may not know, who uh, is 4'4". He's a little person. He's the only little person who headlines theaters and all over the place, has done many hour specials. And he did a movie, a Netflix movie with Christopher Guest. I think it was 4 years ago before the pandemic. It was called Mascots. And 4 years later, he gets a call from Rob Reiner. And Rob Reiner says, I'm doing this movie, Spinal Tap 2. This is Spinal Tap 2. And Christopher recommended you highly, and I'd like to offer you um, a role in the movie. I've got two amazing big scenes that we'd love you to do with the band and Sir Elton John. And it's just an example of wherever you go in your life, personally or professionally, if you're the best representation of yourself and you do great work and you're smart and you fucking show up early and they're not late and you're not an asshole and you're generous and you write people thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes, and send them after you're done, people tend to remember you and you'll get that call.
I love that. That's great. Number four, some people struggle with. The question is, what does your future look like?
Oh, the future is fantastic no matter what. And that's something that it's just amazing, even if the worst fucking thing happened to you, it's amazing. Sometimes my sons, who I'm so proud of, um, And sometimes they don't like me to talk about them, you know, but I can't help it. Um, to put it in perspective, a story about my younger son, Asher, who's 18 now. I was putting him to bed. He was probably 8 years old. And for those parents in the audience listening, when you're reading a young child a book at bedtime, you're kind of reading the book and you're reading and you see them dozing off. And then when they're dozing off, you kind of talk for a little bit longer. And then you sort of kind of get up from your chair as quietly as you can without creaking. And you try to back out of the door so they don't wake up. And I finish the story and his eyes are closed and I'm kind of backing up and walking out the door and I'm almost out the door and I hear, Dad. And I go back to my chair and I'm like, yeah, yeah, sure, what's up? And he just opens his eyes really, so there's just a tiny bit that I can see of his eyes. And he says, Dad, I just want you to know if I don't wake up tomorrow and I die, always know that I had an amazing life. And he closed his eyes and he went to sleep. And most people who might hear that story might be like, oh, or ah, or might even be a little bit depressing. But for me, it was the greatest gift that he could ever give me because it let me know that he knew the secret of life at 8 years old, probably an old soul. And my other son, who's 19, who just got a one-way ticket to New York to work on producing his music with his peers, said something similar on the way to the plane, something morbid, some morbid joke about, if I don't make it, Dad, just know I love my life and it's incredible. And so the future isn't so much about everything that people expect of you or what you expect of yourself. The first key is to understand what life has to offer and understand that your goal in life as a person throughout all the ups and downs is to constantly master how to ride the wave of the ups and the downs, getting thrown off the board, but getting up again and getting back on the board and having another great ride. And it's it's tough because people don't tell your kids that when they don't, there's no classes on that, on what do you do when you get down. You know, like I said, my son Zion is a music producer. It's like he's music has over 4 million streams, but sometimes you write a song and it doesn't do what you think it's going to do. And you don't just pack it in, you just keep going. You know, my other son, Asher, although, I don't know, or who knows whether he thinks it's going to be something he does or not, but presently he's been reselling Nikes and high-end Jordans. And, there's like 142 pairs in my house right now that he's working on selling. And sometimes he'll have this great day, but he won't be that happy. And I'll hug him and I'll say, I'm really proud of you. He said, why are you proud of me? I'm not really that happy today. I said, because that's the sign of a great entrepreneur and a great artist who's struggling with the fight to be happy and the knowledge of knowing he's going to be happy again. It's just, as your parents always said, this too shall pass. So the key that I look forward to is finding the happiness in as many moments as I can. And then professionally, having that carry over as well with the ups and the downs. You don't, it's one amazing thing about sharks. They can't swim backwards. Another amazing thing about sharks, when they are going after that baby seal and they miss, they don't sit on the bottom of the ocean with their hands on their chin saying, woe is me. They just keep going. And they're known as the most powerful, feared, and strongest and longest living surviving creature in the world. And so um, we don't have to be shark-like, but we can also know that we write, produce, star, direct our own lives, and we can create it any way we want to. And there's no limitations, money, nothing. There's there's stories everywhere, anywhere you want to look, of people who started with nothing and have everything they thought they wanted to do and set their goals. And there's many stories with people who started with everything and lost everything and everything in between because they formed and created the life that they decided to create. And the last thing I'll say is that I always encourage my sons to be entrepreneurs. That doesn't mean I don't want them to intern, and that doesn't mean I don't want them to work for great people, but always have the eye on the entrepreneurial prize. Because then when anything goes wrong, you can't point the fingers anywhere. You just look in the mirror and you know that you're responsible for your own destiny. And I love that they're doing that. I always say, do you want to work for the person or do you want to be the person?
That's great. Okay. And number five, we say is unique to this show. And you talked about the ocean and New York City, but the question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
Well, I think we already answered that, so we can go to the next question because I'm not going anywhere where there's not an ocean that I'm looking at. I'm not going to any place. So, you're not gonna. This is the thing about me that's so. Again, I'm not saying it's correct, but if I get the call like, okay, Barry, let's just do something fictional. Let's just make shit up. Uh, Maybe this would never happen. Maybe it would happen. Hey, Barry, I saw what you did on that tour where you toured all those NBA arenas. It was stress-free. It was great, great time. Everybody enjoyed it. I'd love to hire you to do that with me. I've got 25 cities I'm doing, and I'll give you whatever. Insert amount of money here that's crazy. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be a hired gun to go to to fly these private jets. I've flown private jets. Well, you get to go to all these NBA arenas and see sold out. I've seen it. I've done, it's like I want to be doing great work where I want to do great work for people that I really want to do great work for. Now, if one of my artists says, hey, we're going on this tour around the world, I'm going because that person I have that bond with, or it's not just a hired hand. I have a relationship with them for years. But if somebody came from out of the blue and said, we want you to help with this sitcom at Films in Burbank 5 days a week, it pays 500,000 for the year. I'm not going. You're probably saying, well, Barry, it's $500,000, take the fucking money, go. But I, I don't, I want to be happy. I want to be doing things that I love, where I love doing it. Again, if a client of mine got a show that's filming in Burbank, I'm going because we spent that time building that and setting those goals, and I'll make that sacrifice. But I'm not doing it as a hired hand to do it because I love the area where I'm at, and I love being able to experience it. It makes me better as a manager, a producer, a consultant, an interviewer. It makes me better as a person in my personal relationships, and it makes me a better father.
Great, perfect. If you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
Well, if there was a course on death and dying and how to come through it on the other side quicker and more efficiently, I think I would have enrolled in the course at a very young age because there's something about loss that it's hard to quantify, it's hard to accept, it's hard to process, and it's hard to be extraordinary when you're taking that kind of a hit. Obviously, the person who died took the biggest hit of all. And if they could come down from the heavens and sit down next to you, they'd say, Barry, stop this bullshit. Just I celebrated my life, I had a great life, and let's move on and be great for everybody. We all know that. We all know if roles were reversed, that's what we do. We'd come down from the heavens and say, hey, listen, shut the fuck up and don't think about this. I'm fine, and go on with your life. But that's not the way reality works. And so I think that's what I'd probably give myself a class in, a class on death and dying and how to process it and move forward and be as great as you possibly can for everybody as soon as possible.
Perfect. What's a day in your life like?
What's a day in my life like? What number question is this one?
The 7.
7. We're in deep shit, Thomas. What's a day in my life like? It's interesting. That is a question that is unanswerable because every day is completely different. Like, I think since I talk so much business, maybe I'll tell you what a day or a time period is like when it's like a time when Hollywood shuts down and I just take off with my boys. This winter, their school ended and I was in a different place, and I flew from where I was and they flew from LA to meet me in Tokyo. And we were in Tokyo for a few days and we celebrated Christmas in Tokyo. And then that night we flew to Seoul and had Christmas night in Seoul. And then the next day we left for Hong Kong and we spent a couple of days in Hong Kong. And then we went to Ho Chi Minh City, spent a couple of days there. And then we flew to Phnom Penh and spent a couple of days there. And then we flew to Bangkok and spent New Year's Eve and New Year's Day there. And then on the way home, I did a 13-hour layover in Taipei in Taiwan, and we spent the day there and the night there and left at midnight and came back to Los Angeles. So, sort of a day in my life when I'm off work and everything shut down, I always take my boys to different parts of the world, and we, instead of staying in one place, which I don't believe in, I believe in seeing as many countries as possible. We do trips like that.
Excellent. Number 8, lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Lifelong learning. You stay up to date. You wake up and you go out in the world, and then you go to sleep and you do it again. Um, you know, the lessons that we learn in our lives are incredible, and they come from the most bizarre places. I can guarantee you that my sons, they go to school, they spend a whole year in school, and then they go on a trip like I just described. And I would bet any amount of money that they learn more in those 2 weeks than they did in a year of school or more. The things you experience, the people you meet, what people talk to you about, what you learn. I I often feel a way about something, and I don't expect everyone listening to believe that I'm right, because I don't know if I'm right. But I always believe that if I search for knowledge, I'll gain much less knowledge that way than if I don't search for it and I experience it.
I like that. Number 9 is around tools. Do you use both digital and analog tools?
Now, here's where I show my true colors of naivete. Digital and analog
Like digital
go
and non-digital.
be more specific.
Some people will say for analog, they use pen and paper, for example, and otherwise they use maybe their notes app or something.
So the Notes app is considered analog.
The notes app would be digital because it's on your phone.
So analog in your mind is only just pen and paper.
Non-digital. Yeah, basically.
Got it. One of the things I respect so much about Jerry Seinfeld is he always carries around that legal size yellow lined pad of paper with a pen. And everywhere he goes, he's writing stuff down. Or if I go to see Kirk Fox, who's a client of mine, an extraordinary stand-up comedian, but also a great actor on Jury Duty and Reservation Dogs. He has this little tiny piece of paper with his set list and all his material bullet points on it, that he has, and he's always looking at before he goes on. I like writing down notes a lot about what I have to do, and then I transfer it to like this. You ever see those football coaches on the side of the sidelines with those laminated things with different colors, and they're holding it over their mouth and they're looking at it? Like I have something like that with 6 columns on it with different colors that I have all the things that I need to do and accomplish. And I get really excited when it gets down to 2 pages of like uh 0.8, or I'm sorry, 8 font, Arial narrow, uh 6 columns. I'll get excited if it gets down to 2, and sometimes it gets as high as 6 pages. um So I'd say that I like writing when I'm at my desk. I like writing notes on post-it notes or pads, and then I transfer it to my whatever you call it, my master task document that to get my shit together.
Yes. Number 10 is around work-life balance. How do you deal with it?
Balance. Define your what's your definition of balance?
Work-life balance, like do you work an 8 hour a day and then leave the work at work and then move on to another part of your life, or do you have an imbalance and do you focus almost primarily on work, or
Um, I think that it's kind of like this mix, what I try to do. I'm not always successful at it, but I always believe, you just work really hard at something and then you just take, like, if you can take, like, I don't know, some people 5 minutes every half hour, 5 minutes an hour or something, and you just take that time to just walk out of the room and just get your head together and then go back to it. That normally works for me. I also want to say that one of my faults is that I like working at my pace, and I think that that can be great sometimes and detrimental, and I like taking my time. So I find myself working really late hours sometimes. I mean, many times I'll go to bed at like 4 in the morning because I like to take my time working on things and double redundancy and double and triple checking and just making sure everything's right before I send it off. In terms of the personal, I find times in between where I block off times where I know I'm not going to be doing any work and I can spend the time doing things with the people that I love.
nice, that's good. So we're just past halfway here with number 11. If you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
Hmm. What would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? Boy, these are all excellent questions. Um, whatever I'd be doing, pardon the noise in the background, I'm just heating up some hot water. Um, Actually, I'll do you a favor and I'll shut that off because that's too loud. 1 second.
Okay.
I guess that's what editing is for. Um, I don't know exactly what I'd be doing, but what I'd be doing is I'd be working with some kind of content that moves people.
Mm.
It's some kind of content that in the world that helps people um in their personal and professional lives.
Mm.
Um, that could be through music. Um, it could be through motivational speaking. It could be through anything where the content, really makes a difference for people. And I know that's vague, but I think that's what I don't want to stray away from that. I want to be able to do things that help people. Look, I've had interns work for me that are heads of companies, you know, have some of the greatest positions out there in the world. And it's really, really exciting to see that when things start a certain way, and they become wonderful. It's just there's no greater feeling. So that's what I'd like to stick to. I know it's kind of general, but that's what I'm gonna say.
What would you not like to do with your career?
What would I not like to do?
Hmm.
What would I not like to do?
With your career, if you like.
Well, I don't want to be involved in things that don't make a difference. It's like, and there's a lot of things that, we see that, are successful, but I don't know if they make a difference per se. Um, so I want to try to bring bring a level of happiness and knowledge and inspiration to people, and I want to avoid anything that doesn't do that.
Do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I have many of them, but two of them, which people tend to shit on me a lot about because I say them too much, is one is create holy shit moments. And the second one is if you're undeniable, you can't be denied.
Hmm. Nice. How about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
The least favorite word, quote, or sentence. It's weird, I don't even think about it because I don't, when there's something that you don't like, like if you don't like spinach, you're not thinking about spinach. Um, Boy, I'm a real failure on this one. The least liked quote. Oh, thank God there's editing. Um, I think my least liked quote is it's generalized here, but for those of you who are sports fans, and when you watch, there's something about football coaches and press conferences that it just blows me away, and it's my least favorite thing, and nobody ever uses it in regular life or they'd be fired immediately. Like even the greatest coach in the history of the game, let's say like Bill Belichick, I mean, he's known as like the most unbelievably prepared person and everybody knows what they're doing and whatever. And then like I think there was a game this year where he got beat by like 50 points or something like that. And they'll ask him the same questions over and over again, like how you're the most prepared person, how, what happened, like how did it happen? He'll always say, I'm paraphrasing the same thing. Well, we got beaten three phases of the game, all three phases of the game, and we're gonna get to work and prepare for our next opponent next week and do a better job. But that's what he said the week before he got beat by 50 points. So I think the kind of quotes that bother me the most are the deflective quotes that don't address the specifics of a question. Like, how do you prepare? How are you a professional person and prepare every day for this week in all phases of the game and you get beat by 50 points? How does that happen when you're totally prepared and you're the best? But also, if I could go one step further, it's like a life lesson too, because when you don't like something or you don't like the way somebody phrases something, it's because it's not the way that you want it or you think it should be or you need it. But the world isn't about you. The world isn't about you. So that's the thing, no, that's the thing that I try to stress to artists. It's a horrible thing I try to stress because I don't expect anybody listening to have love in their heart for me. But the sooner an artist realizes that no one gives a fuck about you, no one cares. No one cares that you weren't feeling well and you did a bad job on that audition. Nobody cares that the guy said something to you that upset you, and that's why you didn't do as well when you did the voiceover. No one cares that you had an upset stomach before you were on stage, and that's why your performance was lacking. No one cares that you got upset at that PA because you were having a bad day. Every artist is trying to get farther along. And part of hearing things that you don't like is helping you understand what you do like and what you do want and what you do want to understand. So in football, if the greatest coach in the world gets beat by 50, well, as a comedy artist or anybody listening out here and what you do, expect to get the shit kicked out of you sometimes. Because it happens to the best, LeBron James, goes 0 for 8 sometimes. You know, and it's just the way it is, it's just the way the world works. And I think that's whenever I hear quotes that I don't like, it helps me realize that there's going to be hits coming. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to hear things that you don't like. There's going to be people that don't like you. There's going to be people who want to pass you. But you're going to move to where you need to move. Jay Leno once said to me, I'll never forget this. So fucking great. He said, Barry, we're all in a line. And I'm like, what? He said, we're all in a line, Barry. You start at the beginning, you're at the back of the line. Somebody says something to somebody that pisses them off, you move up in the line. Somebody gets fired, you move up. Somebody's late, you move up. Somebody doesn't show up, you move up. Somebody bombs, you move up. And before you know it, you're first in line for the chair of The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And then when he retires, you're the first one in line. And so when you're in that line, you have to be able to accept and handle and every challenge that comes with you and the ups and downs, because everybody wants to pass you and move up in that line. Doesn't matter if you're a cupcake maker, an accountant, a dressmaker, a landscaper. Everybody wants to move up in line.
It's a great one. 15, if you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what word would you choose?
What word would I choose? It's got to be one word.
Well, you can pick a few one words if you want. If you want.
I am going to pick a few words
Okay.
because I think I'm going to break the rules. How I describe myself would be a person who always tries to do things that are uniquely different to the way other people would look at it or do it, resulting in what I consider to be a better outcome for the situation. I always want to be that person who surprises and enlightens people with the unexpected, but that results in a positive outcome, more positive than if it wasn't done that way or if it was done regularly or normally.
Nice. I like it. So final stretch here. What keeps you up at night?
These questions, um, these questions are going to keep me up at night. No, what keeps me up at night? Uh, this is going to be surprising to you and maybe your audience. Nothing. Not a fucking thing keeps me up at night. I I'm not fazed by anything. Well, the world has a plan, and I'm just a small part of that plan, trying to make a difference to as many people as I can. So I'm not going to be losing sleep over anything. I'm the kind of person that gets on a plane and I click the seatbelt and I'm out within a minute. And when the plane lands, I wake up. You know, I just have this thing where I just try to keep as zen as possible. And you know, I'll tell you the things that keep me awake during the day working are the details, making sure all the details are triple and double and quadruple checked so that everything goes right. And sometimes it still doesn't go the way you want it to go. The other day, I'm doing a hotel room. This is so funny because I like to get involved in things that I don't even shouldn't even get involved in. I'm working on a hotel room for somebody, and I want to make sure it's all right. And I book the hotel room, and they reach out to me and they say, "Oh, that's the wrong hotel at that airport. I need to stay at the other hotel." And I book the other hotel, and it has the same numerical address but the different name to the street. And it has the same kind of name to the hotel. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? Am I losing my mind? But I did it and they thanked me. And I called back and I'm like, listen, can you? I never called. I did it all online. And I called and I was like, listen, I'm just so confused because this had the same number. I booked this. They said it was the wrong hotel. I mean, is there more than one uh, of these hotels at the airport? And they laughed and they said, yes, there's four with the same numerical address side by side. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's how I screwed it up. So yeah, it's all, you know, the details will keep me awake, but only during the day.
What's a dream you're chasing?
Ah, besides this podcast, let's see, what dream am I chasing? It's weird. I've never chased a dream. Um, I've just But many people listening to this could say, yes, you did. You wanted to live by the ocean. You chased that dream. You wanted to be in the comedy business. You chased that dream. Um, it's weird though. I never thought that I was chasing it. I just thought that I was living it, living and doing what I wanted to do. But I would guess, people would say that from listening to this, they already have their answer. So there's certainly no dream I'm chasing now, except the biggest dream is to make a difference and do things that help as many people as humanly possible to get to where they want to go, personally or professionally. That's the most exciting thing.
18, what inspires you?
Well, I'm sorry to say, after 18 questions, many of these have been answered. And what inspires me is number 17. Just, just adding value to people's lives professionally and personally. And then through that, looking at the work that we've done together and being proud of that. And also personally as well, just seeing the growth of both my sons and what they're doing in their young careers. And it's mind-boggling um, to see the kinds of things that are happening. And I'm just so proud of them.
Last two here. Any advice you'd like to share?
Well, the biggest advice is to just to you know the way the world works is there's this big umbrella of things that make you happy in the world, and at the top of the umbrella is one word: control. The more control over where you work, what you do, what you do in your personal life, who you love, where you travel, how much money you make. If you can control all those variables, that's the happiest you're going to be. And if you have no control and you're working for a person and you're taking shit and you're in a relationship that's toxic and, you know, you're going to be less happy. So you have to control is the biggest thing. You got to control the variables that you have, but you also have to be understanding that no matter what you do and how much you're involved in things, the world has a way of throwing a curveball to you on any given moment. Anything can happen. Your life or somebody else's life can be taken away in an instant. The work you're doing that you're doing so much great work in could just completely dry up. And then you have to figure out something else. Um, and so, but within those variables that take you out of yourself and your game, one day the person you love could cheat on you and say, I'm leaving you. Or you could do the same or whatever. It's like anything can happen. And so you have to be in a position where you're able to maintain as much control as you can. But when you take the hits, be able to take a breath, wipe yourself off, get up, and keep walking with a smile on your face.
Perfect. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you? What's our call to action today?
Say that one more time.
How do we follow you and what's our call to action?
You can follow me many different ways. Um, on Instagram, it's at Barry Katz. Um, Website is barrykatz.com. The Blueprint, which is something I highly recommend for any artist listening. You can join for free. You can pay different money for different services or different content if you want. It's blueprint hyphen for the word for hyphen success.com. And I think the call to action, that's fascinating. I love the call to action, but I'm going to go in a kind of a different way here. I think the call to action for anybody listening who hasn't fallen asleep yet and is in a coma with their CPAP machine um, is that just do the things incrementally that make you happy and satisfy you personally and professionally, that are going to make a difference to you and as many people as possible. And that's the biggest thing because, you know, a lot of people listening might be saying, oh, I got the fucking shittiest life. I work at this fast food restaurant, 60 hours a week. I'm exhausted at night. I walk dogs for people, and on the weekends I drive a truck, and I got no time. Just do things incrementally. Just figure things out little by little. Take back your life little by little. So if you have the shittiest life and you have like every hour of your life is completely entrenched in shit and shit work and shit relationships, then just say to yourself, okay, let me look at how many hours that is, and let me take back 1 hour a day and make that hour positive and going towards the goals that I want to go towards and the things that are going to make me happy and the things that are going to make me more successful. And before you know it, it will happen. Time goes by quickly. And when you look at it now, you think to yourself, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm too old to do that, or who's going to listen to me now, or I can't do that. I should have done that when I was 18. Don't think of it that way because you can still make a huge difference in your life, whatever age you're in. In comedy, Rodney Dangerfield was Jack Roy until he was like, I think 47 or 48 years old. And then he decided to take a risk and change his persona and name to Rodney Dangerfield. And he became the biggest comedian in the world. And so there's stories all over the internet and everywhere of people who had nothing, were in dead-end jobs, relationships that sucked, and they turned things around. And everything is possible. Possible to learn a new skill. It's possible to try something new personally. It's possible to be successful at anything you want to be successful at. And just start small, little by little. And then before you know it, you're going to have everything you want and you're going to be happy and inspired. And the people in the world are going to watch you and they're going to be inspired.
Awesome. Well, what a great way to end. Thank you so much for being a guest today. Your stories about the ocean and gravitating toward the ocean, of course, are so memorable, but then the philosophical side of it, of course, is equally memorable. So thank you so much.
Thomas, thank you so much. It was an honor and best of luck to you and all your endeavors.
Thank you.